Hey Thrivers, how's it going? I hope you're having a great day. Got my awesome husband Ben here, and he's been helping people with their marriages for a good amount of time here, so I'm excited to have his expertise and authority joining us today as we're talking about intimacy issues in your marriage. So I'm going to give it a little bit of time, let some of you hop on. I know some of you plan to watch it live, and others of you will be watching the replay. So enjoy it. Take a deep breath. Some of the information that you're going to get here today is going to change your life. That's what we do. We create breakthroughs, and sometimes you're in some really challenging situations. And I appreciate your vulnerability in opening up to the group and to us personally about what those challenges are. A common thread that we've noticed is this issue of intimacy. So let's talk for a minute, and I can see a couple of you are on. So hello, welcome. If you have any comments or questions, anything you want us to address, that's what this opportunity is for. Help you create a breakthrough, help you create a mindset shift. And yeah, so excited for our time here together. So what is intimacy? If you're watching live, go ahead and leave a comment. What do you think intimacy in marriage really is? Oftentimes, hey Gus, how's it going? Good to see you.
Hey, yeah, Tank. He goes by Tank.
Oh, Tank. Yeah, hi Tank. So often when we think about intimacy in marriage, I'm going to close a couple of these things real quick. I think that's affecting sorry, I'm just closing some tabs. I think it's affecting our speed here. Okay. So often when we're talking about intimacy or thinking about intimacy, in our culture, for whatever reason, we immediately go to physical intimacy. And while that is absolutely a part of intimacy, it is not the entirety of intimacy. So I'm going to put Ben on the spot here for a minute. He's our guest here today. When we're talking about intimacy, what do you think that fully involves? What does that really entail?
Well, just like you said, sex is obviously a portion of physical intimacy, but it's only a portion of physical intimacy. So there's multiple different types of intimacy. There's, as we addressed, there's physical intimacy, there's emotional intimacy, and what ties into both of these is going to be mental, right? Cognitive intimacy with one another.
Yeah, so at its core level, intimacy is like that, like gut level connection that you have with someone in all aspects. And we're going to go deep into diagnosing a couple of different problems when there are intimacy issues, including the damage caused when intimacy is used. Oh, here we got a definition. I'm going to pause that. Okay, we're going to do Gus's definition here. Intimacy equals everything emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental. Bam, that was great. Good job. That's a really good definition. I like that. That was summed up very well. So yeah, we're going to talk about some of the damage that is caused when your spouse withholds intimacy, when they withhold emotional intimacy, when you feel like they're really closed off, they won't open up to you, and they're not meeting your emotional needs or allowing you to meet their emotional needs. And also the damage that is caused when your spouse or you withholds physical intimacy in the relationship. So if you're watching and you have a vote of which one you want to talk about first, then put it in the comments. Otherwise, if we don't get any comments, then we'll decide. So yeah, if you have any questions or any particular issues that you're experiencing, go ahead and let us know. That's how we can best serve you, is knowing what's going on in your marriage. Well, I'm not seeing anything just yet. So if something comes in, then we might adjust course. But earlier today, I got a question from one of the members here who was asking about emotional intimacy. She was saying that we have physical intimacy, but it's without any kind of emotion. What kind of effect does that have on a marriage? If you're experiencing that, then you can relate to what this woman is talking about. What do you think, Ben, is the ultimate effect of that kind of level of lack of intimacy?
Well, first off, this is something that obviously a lot of women can understand, right? Just in the makeup of man versus woman, that's how it happens. But the effect that this can have is whoever isn't experiencing that emotional intimacy isn't going to be near as engaged in the physical intimacy. And if we allow it, it will actually create a downward spiral type momentum where oftentimes we say, well, I'm not getting this from him or her, so I'm going to withhold this because I know he wants it. And hopefully suddenly he understands and we can get back on track. That's really the way that perpetuation starts.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen it time and time again. And unfortunately, not just like a huge extent, but we've experienced that a little bit in our earlier days of saying, I feel like you're not meeting my need here, so I'm just going to withhold here. And you do that because you want them to step toward you to appreciate how painful or difficult that is, thinking that that will wake them up to then start to meet your needs. Am I right? That's kind of the cycle that goes. And then what happens is it's kind of the cat and mouse going back and forth. It spirals further and further to the point where you are meeting less and less of your spouse's needs. They're meeting less and less of your needs. And we kind of relate this to our dog. Our dog tore her ACL. Okay. It was a partial tear. And it was just a tiny little tear. It took months of understanding what was actually going on. We finally took her to the vet and did an x-ray. And they said it's a partial tear. If we do surgery, it's just 90% likely going to tear again. So we decided not to go that route. But there was nothing that we could do with that little tiny tear. The vet told us that the only thing that would happen is that the tear would get worse and worse and worse until it finally ruptured. Awful experience for our dog, right? But an awful experience for anyone who's struggling with this in their marriage. It's kind of like this slow, painful tearing. And what it does is if you allow these kind of cycles of withholding intimacy, whether that's emotional or physical, it just is that little tear. It creates a gap between you and your spouse that it will only widen. It will only continue to tear and tear and tear and cause more and more damage until you stop that cycle. So that's what we're going to be encouraging you guys to do. But we have some comments here. Ben, do you want to read Gus's and then we'll go to Barbara's?
Yeah, so Tank says, how does one get past resentment towards a spouse withholding sexual intimacy? That's a great question. And this comes back to actually you're going to have to turn around and stop looking at they, right? This question is just resonating them. What did they do to me, right? And they need to recognize that. So what we need to do is, you're a military guy, about face, right? You need to turn around, look at yourself, say, what can I do to get over this, right? What can I change in myself to get over this, right? Because in reality, all we're doing by allowing this mentality to, I'm resentful towards somebody for something, all we're doing is allowing that to basically dam our progression. Because we're just not moving past the issue. So we need to do an about face. We need to take a look at it for what it is. Notice that is something they did. Okay, what can I do? Let's find the root cause. Why did they withhold that sexual intimacy from me that they know I crave, or need? What can I do so that they feel more fulfilled, so that they feel like they can rejuvenate me with what they know I need? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you see the value in what Ben just shared? That is pure gold, guys. If you take a minute and just really let that sink in, go back and listen to that a couple times, that's going to shift everything. That's going to completely change the direction that you're on. And like I said, with that little ACL tear where it could only go one way, fortunately in your marriage, you have the ability to heal it now. You have the ability to stop it from tearing now. And you can start to heal that, to mend that, to break that cycle that's been going on there. So can you see the value of that? Yeah, that's amazing. I do want to address the fact that Tank, I got your name right, that there is damage that is caused when you withhold sexual intimacy from your spouse or they withhold that from you. Intimacy is one of the most beautiful aspects, a sacred aspect, I believe, absolutely, in a relationship, and it should be kept within marriage. And it is one of those rare experiences that we have as humans where we connect with another person in literally every single way. We're fully vulnerable and open. And even like you physically come together as one, but you also spiritually, emotionally come together as one. And experiencing that unity, you don't have that in any other relationship. And so that is one of the most powerful, it is the most powerful kind of level of relationship that we could ever have with another human being. And so when you choose to withhold that from your spouse, that causes damage. Now, let's look at the reasons why are they doing that? Or why are you doing that if you're in that kind of position? A common theme that we see, okay, and this is, I'm just going to use a common example here. I don't like using cookie cutter approaches to marriage because each of us are very specific, but I'm hoping that this can help illustrate an idea of what we're talking about here. Amen, Gus says, yay. Awesome. So we'll just call this, I'll just pull out two names, Linda and Greg, okay? This is a person that we've worked with, and this is kind of their experience working with my partner, Mark. And so when Linda and Greg came to us, they had trust issues and affairs going on prior to working with us, with Mark. And we uncovered what had led up to that. Because up until that point, all they could see was the hurt of the trust being broken and the pain of what they were going through at that moment. But when we dissected it back years and years, you could see the gradual progression. Okay, so stay with me. I like to use metaphors, so we're going to go with the little tear of the ACL. Okay, so the thing that caused the tear of the ACL was a really gradual thing that happened years and years ago. So when they had kids, first had kids, Linda soon found herself exhausted, emotionally drained. And at the end of the day, when her husband had wanted physical intimacy, she was literally she just didn't have physical energy to do it. She had given so much of herself. She hadn't taken care of her self-nurturing, her own happiness levels to keep her energy up. She'd put her kids first and completely exhausted himself. And Greg was very into his work. Is that the name I used, Greg? I want to make sure I'm using the same name. Yeah. I don't want to switch people on you. Don't want to get confused. Okay, so Linda and Greg. And I just do that to protect, confidentiality. But so Greg worked very hard in his career and dedicated himself a lot there. And when he came home, he wanted a break. That made Linda resentful because she wasn't getting the help that she needed. Therefore, she withdrew intimacy even more. Because she started withdrawing intimacy, then he started withdrawing emotional intimacy. When she wanted to talk, he just felt like, why should I talk? He felt, in his own words, he put walls up, right? He didn't want to be open with her because she wasn't serving his needs. She didn't seem to care about his needs. So it made him feel a little bit like, why should I care about hers? That's just kind of human nature. If someone's going to put up a wall around us, then we're going to put up a wall around them. And it continued to perpetuate the cycle to the point where physical intimacy fell off, was no longer much of a part of their relationship. They were completely emotionally disconnected. She felt like she didn't have a husband that was there for her, supported her with the kids. She felt like she was a single mom, and he felt like he was living with a roommate, right? Someone that wasn't there for him either. And so, over the years, an affair happened. He connected with someone at work who made him feel good, who told him he was a good person, and he formed a connection outside the marriage. And then this then obviously broke Linda's heart. And so this is the point where they then came to us. But if you can look back and see how over time, their choices to not meet each other's needs created a wider and wider gap between them. And that's the cycle that we're talking about. And if you find that you're in that cycle, then you need to take action immediately so it doesn't continue to separate until a point where it ruptures. That's not a pretty place to be in.
Right. I'd like to go back to the very beginning of this because it's super important. We can see the cycle now, but let's look at it from the beginning, right? So she was tired, emotionally and physically drained by the end of the day because of everything that's going on, right? We all get that way from time to time. What Lyndon didn't do was allow her husband to alleviate that in that relationship. What do I mean? I mean, Linda, at this point, so that the cycle doesn't get perpetuated, she knows her husband is making advances, right? Showing that he's interested. Instead of saying, no, I'm just too tired, and rolling over and letting it go at that, she needs to open up and say, look, I'm so sorry. I know what you want right now, and I want to be able to provide that for you. I am so burnt out. I'm really tired because of this, and this, and really just unload the weight, right? That's why we're married, so that we can gain strength off one another, not hold in what is weighing us down, right? If any of you guys have ever heard the term equally yoked, right? It's all over the Bible and so forth. That's what you are in marriage. And what a yoke does is it distributes the weight evenly between the pair, okay? If we don't allow the yoke to work, it's gonna break. It makes that cycle. It just starts the cycle, okay? So that's what Linda could have done at the beginning. Then, instead of feeling emotionally and physically dejected by her, Craig could say, oh, wow, I see a problem here, and I know I've got the means. I can help her out. I can do something. And what happens is their love not only grows through that, but instead of closing up, he's able to help her instead of pulling away to try to keep himself safe or whatever the reasons are that he pulls away.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Okay, I'm going to go to Barbara's comment here. She says, I can't understand why my husband is completely devoid of all human emotion. Okay, Barbara, first of all, I appreciate your comment. I appreciate your vulnerability and reaching out. I am going to pick up a little bit of your languaging here. There's kind of this all or nothing, right? And sometimes we use, okay, I'm just going to call it what it is, some extremes in language, okay? But I will address what your problem is, absolutely. I just want you to be aware of that, because whenever I hear that he's devoid of all human emotion, to me, that's a very extreme use of language, right? I understand you're trying to illustrate a point, but just be aware of that, because when we create an extreme in language, it's all or nothing, then that doesn't leave any ground to really work with. So I just want you to open up your mind there a little bit. That's me coaching you out of love and concern and caring, because I know that this is something that you want to work on. Otherwise, you wouldn't have messaged it. So when you're saying that your husband seems, I'm going to say seems, completely devoid of all human emotion, this is an indication that there is a barrier there, right? And if we could talk one-on-one, I would go into this a little bit deeper with you, and I would invite you to do that. You can get on a call with us and talk with us one-on-one, and we can go a little bit deeper into what exactly is going on there. But it seems clearly to me like he has put up a wall. There is not a single human being that is mentally healthy that is devoid of emotion, right? But there is a reason why he's choosing not to let you see it. He's choosing not to be vulnerable with you. So for some reason, he's put up a wall to keep himself safe. And so understanding what that really is going to lead to a major breakthrough in your relationship. Does that make sense? I hope that is clear to you. Yeah.
Barbara, I want to hit on something. This is not, Heather didn't share that with you so that you can go in and lambaste him and say, look, there's something you're not sharing with me.
No, that would be the opposite of what you want to do.
Exactly. Let's not choke him now, okay? Instead, you need to figure out, okay, what's going on in the relationship that is pulling him away, right? Just like Linda's case, right? What's going on? What can I do to bring him back, to open him up, right? Because obviously there has been an emotional connection with you guys before, and there's something missing now. Otherwise, you wouldn't have this contrast to say that he's devoid now. So you do have that contrast. You've had that experience. What can we do to get that back, right? That's the mentality we need to go to, not blaming. So just be careful there with how you do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ben, thank you. That clarified that a lot and brings up a really important issue here. So when you have a spouse that is withdrawing emotionally, communication, emotions, sex, physical intimacy, any of that, the last thing that's going to work is for you to come at them really strong. Okay. That's only going to make them retreat further. We've seen it time and time and time again. That is the wrong way to solve this type of problem. Okay. There are specific things that you need to do to kind of like coaxing a child or coaxing an animal to come out of their shell, right? To come toward you. And that's not going to happen through criticism, complaining, blaming, putting it in their face. It's definitely not going to come by withholding it yourself. We've already talked about that. I hope that's become clear to everyone here. That anytime you're withholding, it's only going to perpetuate the cycle. There are specific things that you're going to need to do. And so if you would like help on how to have that conversation with your spouse, to say, look, I feel like you have no emotional connection with me. I feel like the intimacy is just not there. There's a wall there. That's something that we can absolutely help you with. So just in conclusion, I don't see any other comments or questions here. So just in conclusion, if you feel like you are struggling with any of these issues, whether you feel withdrawn from your spouse, you feel like you can't open up to them, you feel like physical intimacy is lacking in what it needs. Oh, okay, we just got one more. We'll address this one in just a second. Then yeah, that's something that we want to address immediately so that it doesn't continue to fester and create more and more problems or wreak havoc in your relationship. Okay. Ben, did you want to read this one?
Yeah. So we've got a comment came in from Amanda. She says, what is one tip for a couple trying to work through so many things that tear their relationship apart, such as work, responsibility, multiple children, okay? Trying to find mutual ground to have a basis of what each one needs, but finding the time for it. Wow, that's so many of us, obviously, we're trying to make ends meet and so forth, and we do have responsibilities and they need to be attended to. That is an absolute great question and very applicable to just about everybody, whether they're millionaires or scraping the bottom of the bucket, right? Or barrel. And number one thing is you have got to figure out what it is you want, right? Figure out where you are, set priorities, okay? That's the number one thing. You're gonna have to set priorities and then work. You have to communicate what those priorities are and agree on them as a couple. So then we're not painting a mental picture in our head, but not communicating it. Does that make sense? Because nobody can fulfill an expectation that's not verbalized or written down so that they understand it. I mean, it's like shooting arrows in the dark. You're never going to hit your target. If you do, good on you, and you're super lucky. It had nothing to do with skill. Okay? Absolutely nothing to do. So set priorities, obviously. We've got children. Heather and I have 6. We know about time with children, okay? Responsibilities. So absolutely. Number one would be set priorities. Figure out how you're going to meet those priorities. Put them in order from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and distribute your time accordingly. Okay?
Yeah, I would add to that. I'm just noticing here that the trying to find mutual ground. So Amanda, I'm curious to know if that means that you feel like you don't have mutual ground. And if that's the case, then we need to go a little bit deeper into that. We can't just give like that's beyond the scope of this platform here to give you a really solid answer on. So the best way to do that would be to get on a call with us where we can find out exactly what's going on. If you feel like you don't have that mutual ground where you can find out what each other's needs are, how to prioritize them, like Ben said, and making the time for it, then we need to figure out what's going on there, So again, in that kind of situation, it's best to really do a deep dive. So yeah. Final thought that I had real quick about intimacy. I'm trying to articulate this in the best way possible. Okay. Just opening up a little bit about Ben and I's experience. There have been times in our relationship where physical intimacy hasn't been much of a possibility because if you've been with us for a little while, you probably know my story a little bit, but 29 years old, I was diagnosed with cancer while I was pregnant. Okay. So there's times in life when your spouse might not be able to meet all of your needs, right? You could say, I have this need. And for men and for women, sex, physical intimacy is very, very important. It helps them feel connected. It helps them feel whole, unified, satisfied, fulfilled, right? As well as the physical needs as well. So, but there might be times in life where your partner can't meet those needs for you. Does that mean you just hit the hills and run, right? That's not what Ben did. And that's not what I've done either, right? And there's just those ebbs and flows in life. And I think that the ultimate idea, though, is to have a connection with your spouse. And in those moments, make sure that you are meeting their needs as best as you can, right? So I just wanted to put that out there, that maybe your spouse really is exhausted. Maybe they're physically tired, right? Maybe that's something that, maybe there's a medical condition. I know several of you have opened up and mentioned that with medical conditions regarding, sexual drive and interest. And so what are other ways that you can meet their needs? They can meet your needs, and choosing to have that truly unconditional love for each other. One that isn't based on, what is he giving me? What is he giving me? If you're always focused on that, what does my spouse give to me? Are they meeting my needs? Why aren't they meeting my needs? Why are they so emotionally disconnected from me? Why are they so physically disconnected from me? You will never be happy in your relationship because it's always centered on you. And so what you need to do is shift from a you mindset to an us mindset. And in every way that you can, strive to be there for your spouse, meet their needs. And it's a beautiful process because as you do that, they will naturally have a tendency and inclination to want to meet your needs as well. And that will sustain you through those different challenges and those different times. As we get older, our bodies change and, sex just may not become as important. Some couples it is, okay? I'm not saying it's not a thing, but also just understand that there's ebb and flow in life, and that a truly unconditional, thriving marriage is flexible, right? Unlike the ACL that just snaps and tears and breaks. It bends, it moves with life. It handles the stresses and the pressures because above all, it has that inner strength and that inner foundation to make it through. So, Ben, did you have any final thoughts before?
No, it's something that was kind of funny when you were talking there was a quote came to my mind of one of our past presidents. He said, ask not what you can do for your country, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. I love that quote, and we can put in there whatever we want, right? Ask not what your spouse can do for you, but what you can do for your spouse or your children or whatever, okay? It's going to be way more fulfilling doing it that way. You're going to see way more progress.
Absolutely. We just got one more comment here from Donna. What if only one person is meeting the needs and the other one is not getting all that they need? Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about here. If you feel like you're meeting all their needs and they're just not giving back, then I can't give you a blanket answer about that. There's a deeper issue going on for whatever reason. And so the best way to move forward, if you feel like you've got that little gap starting to happen, Be a loving servant. I love that. Gus Tank. Thank you. Gus Tank. Sorry. You have a new name in my book. So I would encourage you to not let that gap widen. Don't let it get any more damaged. Don't do the slow, painful death of your marriage. But choose now to take action and to start to mend some of these things. Get clarity on why that is. Why am I giving my spouse everything and I feel like I'm not getting my needs back, right? Or why do I feel like I'm withholding from my spouse? What is it that's caused that gap? Once you get to the root of it, then you can start to develop and create that strong foundation of a marriage, like I was talking about, that I truly have, but Ben and I truly have, that has got us through some very challenging times and will withstand the test of time so that it's truly happy and thriving. So we appreciate you all. Thank you for being vulnerable and honest with us in this awesome discussion. If you really go back and listen to some of the things shared, I know it will change your lives and change your marriages. So finally, if you feel like, again, like you're needing some help with this, then just let us know. We'd be happy to get on a call with you, get some clarity about what's going on, and really get you going in the right direction. So you guys are awesome, and we will see you next time.
You want to give them the link?
Oh, yeah. I will post the link in the comments here in just a minute. So very good.
All right. Perfect.
All right.
Thanks, guys.